So now let's discuss about other powers of Congress. Okay, so let's view the other powers of Congress after discussing yung ating discussion on the power of appropriation. So all right, so let's now discuss on other powers of Congress. Okay. So now, of course, let's discuss yung powers of oversight. Okay. So when we speak of powers of oversight, okay, so ito yung discussion natin dun sa investigation in aid of legislation. So of course, when we speak of oversight, syempre, of course, Congress passes laws. Okay. But of course, laws are meant to be, it's meant to be, you call this, it's meant to be expirable, di ba? I mean, over time there would be changes into the needs of the law, 'di ba? So pwedeng ma-repeal na siya, 'di ba? Pwede na siyang hindi maging applicable after 10 years, 'di ba? That's a possibility naman, 'di ba? Of course, Congress also may have the say in checking if this law is effective, 'di ba? So kung effective ba siya, kung hindi man siya effective, we're going to propose measures to make the law more effective, 'di ba? Or it's going to have so 'di ba kung naalala niyo noon, 'di ba, si RA 9344 sa Juvenile Child Welfare, 'di ba? 'Di ba previously because of the RPC, 'di ba, ang nakalagay sa RPC 9 years old and below exempt lang sa criminal liability, 'di ba? Then above, that's 9 to 15, kailangan may discernment. That's the old provisions in your revised penal code. Then, di ba, nagkaroon na RA 9344. Di ba, nangyari sa RA 9344, 15 years old below, matik siya, exempt siya from liability. Tapos from 15 to 18, suspended yung sentence mo subject to your reversion program, di ba? So, syempre, that was highly criticized. If many of you would remember that that particular provision of RA 9344, and it's also been a contentious thing in your in law school before when I was still in law school and taking the bar. That was the hot topic. Diba? Nagkaroon ng issue kasi syempre, of course, there is this theoretical thing that, well, a 14-year-old person may commit, let's say, rape against a 16-year-old. Then what you're going to do if you're the father of the 16-year-old? You're just going to hire a 14-year-old to take revenge, di ba? So, yun yung naging parang butas ng batas, kaya nga to si Senator Pangilinan is being getting flack for the wrong reasons because of the law, kasi siya yung proponent kasi nung RA 9344 eh. So, di ba nagkaroon na ng amendments diyan, di ba? So, it's because of that oversight, di ba? Siyempre, nire-review yung batas ng Kongreso. So, because of the oversight, di ba, nagkaroon na ng bagong amendments, di ba? So, I think they adjusted the age of criminal responsibility and they emphasize more on yun sa mga bahay pag-asa, di ba? Which is, I think naman DSWD, although mayroon pang mga lugar sa ibang bansa na wala pang bahay pag-asa, pero one by one, the DSWD, through the JJWC, di ba, Juvenile Justice Welfare Council, has already been doing strides, okay, in implementing the law. So, pero because of, yung unang reiteration ng RA 9344, nagkaroon bigla ng oversight, syempre, yung mga ating congressman, di ba? So, what happened was, they adjusted certain parts of the law. So, it's within their power of oversight, di ba? Kasi, paano ine-exercise yung power of oversight? Babalik tayo dun sa mga committees, di ba? So, your committees would be conducting hearings in aid of legislation. Siyempre, ang alam lang natin kasi in aid of legislation, yung nakikita natin sa TV ngayon, di ba? Pero, may purpose yan, di ba? Parang, balikan natin yan sa yung nakikita nyo sa TV, okay? Siyempre, kaya kami committee so that they can conduct hearings or conferences for them to exercise their power of oversight na, okay, pwede nating improve tong batas na to. Okay? That's a possibility. Okay? So, yung purpose ng mga committees natin. And it is those committees na nagko-conduct ng investigation. Yun ay kaya 'di ba yung huli kay Kibuloy, 'di ba? Nagkaroon ng ng hearing is yung sa committee ni Senator Risa, kasi remember Senator Risa has the committee on women and children, 'di ba? Eh 'di ba ang issue kasi kay Kibuloy is child abuse, 'di ba? So it's possible. Okay? So yun yung kaya inimbestigahan nila kasi within doon sa realm na committee or yung sa drugs, 'di ba? Pinipilit ni Senator Bato na siya mag-imbestiga. Kasi within yung sa committee niya. So pwede siya mag-conduct ng committee. Now, of course, ano ba purpose ng mga committees na yan in aid of legislation? Okay? Ang purpose ng committees na yan is syempre to get yung legislation. As we said, di ba, kanina, marami kang pwedeng pagkunan ng proposals sa isang batas. So, pwedeng galing sa constituents mo. Then also, kung mayroon kang investigasyon na nangyayari sa mga bagay-bagay sa buhay-buhay, di ba, pwede kasi maging basis yan pwede kasi maging basis na pwede kang magpasa ng batas, di ba? Oh, one good example, di ba? Alala niyo si Hayden ko, di ba? Napunta sa Senate hearing yung kaso ni Hayden ko, di ba? Kasi sabi nga nila, careless whisper daw, di ba? Di ba? Yan, naka-record na tuloy yung kanta ko, di ba? So, yun. So, yun, di ba? May careless whisper. Pero, di ba, because of what happened dun sa Hayden ko thingy-bob, di ba? I'm not going to go into detail to that. But because of that, di ba, nagkaroon tayo ng anti-voyeurism law, di ba? Si RA 9998, di ba? It is true it's because of what transpired there. Well, call it directly or indirectly kasi nagpatawag sila ng Senate investigation. Si Bong Revilla, naalala ko siya, nagpatawag niya. Siya, may committee yan dati. So, di ba, nagpatawag na investigation. Eventually, the legislation that came out of that is yung anti-voyeurism law. Di ba? So, minsan, isipin natin, medyo scandalous. Like, for example, the last time, di ba, ang dami nagko-comment, di ba, pumunta let's say, si Sandro Mulak, di ba? Parang, iba, comment nila, ba't hindi lang kayo pumunta sa korte? Blah, 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 blah. Okay. Ngayon, well, notwithstanding how one senator there, si Jinggoy, kind of questioned Sandro, di ba? Although naka-executive session, pero recorded, di ba? Pero, notwithstanding that, di ba? May purpose yung mga senators natin, di ba? Is, of course, malay mo, magkaroon ng improvement sa labor laws on workplace or baka ma-improve yung Safe Spaces Act, di ba? That is included in aid of legislation process, okay? Alright, now, ano limitation yan? Okay, syempre limitation yan is yung if Congress would exercise legislative veto. Okay? So, I think we kind of discussed legislative veto dun sa separation of powers. But just to restate and recap that, diba, but if Congress will now exercise a power which is accorded only to the President, diba? Example, nag-implement ang Presidente. Biglang may say bigla ang Congress. Okay? That quote-unquote say by Congress can be considered as a legislative veto. If that is considered as a legislative veto, it's unconstitutional because it will violate separation of powers. Kaya diba, ang example dyan is, of course, ang una example dyan is a US case sa US Supreme Court, si INS versus Chadha. Kasi sa INS versus Chadha, merong provision sa Naturalization Act na pag inaprobahan na ng Presidente, pwede pang mag-override yung Kongreso. Sabi ng Supreme Court of the United States sa INS versus Chadha, that's considered a legislative veto. Being a legislative veto, it's unconstitutional. It will encroach yung implementation powers ng executive department mo ng presidente. This was applied sa kaso ni Abacada Guro versus Purisima. Okay, so si Abacada Guro versus Purisima involves the attrition law. Medyo customs tong discussion na to. Pero kasi, meron kasi, usually naman, ang mga laws natin, meron yang oversight clauses. So, dun sa oversight clause ni Abacat, dun sa attrition law, may nakalagay doon that the President will implement something, yung Department of Finance by itself. But this is subject to Congress by way of oversight, supposedly, they're going to interfere with the implementation. Ganun yung dating nung oversight function. Noon sa clause na nakalagay doon sa RA 9335. Sabi ng Supreme Court, yung oversight clause na yon is unconstitutional because nakikialam na si executive department, nakikialam na si legislative department sa implementation, which Congress has already passed the law. Why would they interfere with the implementation when the executive itself has the power to execute and implement the law? That by itself is considered a legislative veto. That's why it's declared unconstitutional because you're already encroaching the powers of the executive. So, encroachment siya. It would be a violation of your separation of powers. Okay? Now, ang next ngayon natin didiscuss is the contempt power. Kasi i-relate din natin siya doon sa in aid of legislation. Kasi doon naman nagkakaroon ng problema sa in aid of legislation. Kasi napansin nyo naman, and I think you have observed this with a lot of personalities in the recent Quadcom committee hearings and Senate hearings, di ba? Di ba, nangyayari is this. Nag-i-invite ng resource persons nag-i-invite ng resource persons, syempre ang Senado. So, kaya nga 'di ba si BP, sabi niya resource person siya, ba't siya magte-take ng oath daw, 'di ba? So, nag-invite siya ng mga resource persons, okay? Pero clear natin may ruling ang Supreme Court yan, be it resource persons or not. You're still required to take an oath, Supreme Court has already ruled on that, Okay, so siyempre, pag merong ganyan, investigasyon, so may in aid of legislation kayo, di ba? So nangyari, in aid of legislation ka ngayon, siyempre, since nasa Senado ka, hindi naman yan parang korte na may rules how to ask questions, di ba? May remedial law kayo matututunan next sem, di ba? So, it's remedial law that would still control. Akala, syempre, rules of court yun Syempre, pagdating sa Senado, hindi applicable ang rules of court doon. Syempre, meron sila sariling procedures. Number two, hindi sila bound by technical rules of procedure. So, they can ask anything under the sun. Kaya nga, di ba, yung kay Sandro Mulak, di ba? They're criticizing yung line of questioning. Well, legally, senators can do that naman. Kasi, if they're going to limit them, di ba, with how the manner of their questioning, di ba? If you limit them, anong mangyayaring sense nun, di ba? Anong mangyayaring sense nun kung ililimit mo siya, di ba? So, hindi parang hindi nagawa ng senator effectively yung kanyang work, di ba? Hindi niya nagawa, di ba? Hindi niya nagawa yung work niya, naipit siya, di ba? So, or nahinder siya, di ba? Nahinder siya dun sa So, the senator has the leeway to ask anything under the sun. Ngayon, syempre, in the course of the questionings, syempre, ayaw sumagot ng ayaw sumagot ng resource person. Syempre, pag ayaw sumagot ng resource person, anong gagawin ng Senado o ng Kongreso? Papa-contempt ngayon siya. Di ba? So, may contempt power ang Senado. Now, ano ang limits ng contempt power ng Senado? Okay, so, siyempre, ang unang discuss natin yung general premise. So, ang general premise lagi ng power ng Kongreso as to exercising contempt would be your old case of Arnold versus Nazareno. Okay? So, dun sa Arnold versus Nazareno, in-uphold ng Arnold yung power ng Congress to cite persons in contempt, especially during congressional investigations. And, of course, ang issue kasi dun is pwede ka bang i-habeas corpus? Kasi nagpa-habeas corpus si Arnold Kasi ayaw niya sumagot dun this was the time na mga scandals na ilupa din. So, noong 1950s, ganun din. Kung gaano ang mga investigasyon ngayon. Well, it's similar. Hindi lang masiguro ganun tindi. Pero the point is, well, Congress has been dealing with that even in the 1940s and 50s. So, nung time na yun, this was the Tambobong Buena Vista Estate scam. Diba? So, karoon ng kickbacks noon kasi kickback lang naman noon sa mga ngayon iba na ang measurement ng kickbacks ngayon 'di ba? So ay sagutin ni Arnold yung mga questions. So kinontempt siya. So tagal siya nagstay sa bilibid ngayon, pa-habeas corpus ngayon siya. Well, sabi Sabi niya, ba't indefinite na yung kulong ko? Biglang ako sumagot eh. Well, sabi ng Supreme Court, well, iba yung power kasi ng contempt power ng Senate. It's a bit a kind of all-encompassing. That the only key for you to get out of there is to answer the questions. Okay? Yun yung sinasabi. Yun yung general premise sa Arnold versus Nazareno. But of course, meron ng modifications yan sa Balag versus Senate na, well, Balag was recently convicted. Well, it's connected with the case. Kasi si Balag was one of the accused dun sa yung Atio Castillo hazing case. So, after kasi nagkaroon ng hazing case, nagkaroon ng Senate investigation. So, syempre si Balag ayaw sumagot syempre ng obviously naman ito, akusado ka ba, sasagot ka ng mga tanong nakakainit na pwede ka ma-incriminate. That's the risk kasi pag nasa Senate investigation ka nga. You can be asked anything, tapos biglang umuo ka, tapos gamitin na ngayon admission sa'yo sa korte. That's a risk, di ba? So yun ang nangyari. You call this. So yun ang nangyari. So, di ba, question ni Balag. So, well, sabi naman ng Supreme Court sa Balag, and it was reiterated sa Uyong versus Senate. It's a recent case involving the formally guys involved in formally, okay? Sabi ng Supreme Court in both of those cases, syempre yung pagtatanong you should also consider the rights of the resource persons under the Bill of Rights. So syempre, kung gusto niya mag-right to remain silent, invoke niya. Kung gusto niya mag-right to privacy, invoke niya. Okay? Nangyayari nga lang ngayon sa Senate because, well, it's election time siguro, pipilit pa rin nilang sagutin kahit na incriminatory. Kaya ginagawa na lang nila, pinapakontempt na lang nila, di ba? Oh. I don't know, di ba? Linaw-linaw naman ng balag at saka ng uyong na kaso. Pero, well, they're still exercising as if it is still Arnold versus Nazareno is still the prevailing doctrine. Although, it does not, para sa akin, it's not a diminishing factor. Sinasabi lang naman ng balag at saka ng uyong na limited lang. Baka pwede namang hindi mo tanungin yung mga bagay na incriminatory in nature. Okay? Yun naman sinasabi doon. You should prevent that. Di ba? Kasi ang problem nung pag sinagot naman ng resource person, ano mangyayari ngayon? May on record ka na. Di ba? Pero there is a prevention on that. And I think it's already been consistent naman aside from even in previous cases before balag, di ba? So, yung resource person should be treated with respect din, di ba? Kasi resource persons yan, hindi naman yung akusado, di ba? Nga lang, minsan nanggigigil lang yung mga congressman natin sa mga Senate at saka committee hearings lately, di ba? So, well, I understand them. Of course, they also have this, they might have good intentions naman, di ba? I'm still going to have that presumption, okay? All right. Then other powers ng Senate, okay? So ano ba other powers ng Senate? So of course we have electoral tribunals, okay? So nakalagay sa Article 6 Section 17. So pwede sila mag-establish ng electoral tribunal to hear and decide election contest or controversies within and among their members. So, for purposes of congressmen and party list representatives, you have the House of Representatives Electoral Tribunal or HRET. When it comes to the Senate, we have the Senate Electoral Tribunal. Okay? Siyempre, ang issue ngayon dito sa Electoral Tribunal is kailan mag-a-assume ng jurisdiction. Kasi dati noon, simple lang ang jurisdiction yan. Pag 10 days, example, yung congressman or senator mo, biglang may magpo-protest. Usually man nagpo-protest dyan pag sa congressman, yung second placer. Tapos yung sa Senate, usually yung 13th place. Okay? Pag nag-file sila ng protest, usually noon, the usual procedure there was, after you count 10 days, then within the 10 days, that is the time where you can file your election protest or co-warranto. Depende kung ano ikakaso mo. Pwede kang election protest, pwede kang co-warranto. Now, because of certain decisions of the Supreme Court, which I think I kind of disagree a bit, okay? Ngayon, ang requirement is, hindi na ganun 10 days. Kasi ang issue kasi dyan is sino may jurisdiction, COMELEC ba or the tribunal. Okay? Ngayon, under the current ruling, as said sa reiterate siya sa Buenafe versus COMELEC and recently reiterated sa Uy versus COMELEC, okay? For the HRET or yung electoral tribunal ng House to have jurisdiction, kailangan meron kang oath na and nasa list ka na, nasa roster ka na ng congressmen or ng members ng Congress ng House of Representatives. Which I think is a little bit confusing because paano kung ayaw ka i-out ng speaker? Di ba? E di, sa COMELEC pa rin yung kaso. Magkakaroon ng issue on, kasi magkakaroon ng issue on jurisdiction eh. Kasi syempre, kung hindi ka pasok dun sa, kailangan mag-out at nasa roster ka na, hindi, sa COMELEC ka magpa-file. Hindi ka makapag-file sa HRET. Di ba? Sa COMELEC ka magpa-file. Syempre, of course, it's a matter of venue. Siyempre, if you're confident on filing something in the COMELEC, di ba? You can do it there, di ba? Mas feeling mo confident ka, di ba? File mo sa COMELEC, di ba? Unlike sa HRET, siyempre baka may political blah 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 yan, di ba? Mas open kasi sa Congress in fairness naman to Congress. Mas open sila when it comes to election protest. Kasi siguro iba gusto sa COMELEC, di ba? So anyways, my comment naman doon is, well, it's kind of absurd eh. Sa akin, mas may particularity yung old way of doing it eh, like counting yung after 10 days. That's more clear. Kasi syempre, inelect mo eh. Ngayon kasi nire-require na kasi ngayon na i-assume ang office. Actually, si Justice Leonen, I think, Kagiwa, is against that. Actually, dun sa Uy versus COMELEC, they registered their dissent dun sa doctrine na yon, na para sa kanila, it's not really a sound doctrine. Kasi parang you're going to leave something left to a discretion na hindi naman dapat bigyan ng discretion. Diba? Particularly, ang magiging issue niyan, that will be discretionary. Diba? Then we have Commission on Appointments. So, your Article 6, Section 18. So, syempre, yung sa Commission on Appointments, this is used, di ba, in relation sa appointing power. Kasi, di ba, dun sa appointment power ng Supreme Court, ng presidente ng Pilipinas, ng president, he can appoint anyone, di ba? So, pag in-appoint ka, di ba, may formalities yan, may oath ka, meron kang commission, meron kang yung commission pipirmahan mo, tapos, siyempre, may security of tenure ka, di ba? Dahil civil service ka eh, o kahit na temporal ka, you're still civil service. Now, the next issue there is, depende sa office yan. Kasi kung nandun ka sa list under the Constitution, like, kung cabinet secretary ka, AFP member ka, above colonel or naval captain, ambassador ka, required yung confirmation ng Commission on Appointments. Si Commission on Appointments, so your appointment is valid but it's subject to confirmation, 'di ba? So later on, we're going to discuss yung difference ng ad interim at saka ng permanent appointment. Okay? So sa section natin on the executive department, 'di ba? Pero of course, Congress will now form a Commission on Appointments. So usually, yung Commission on Appointments, of course, I think it's 12 members, 24 yata members. But of course, it's composed of so let's read our section 6 article section 18, 'di ba? So particularly ang COA natin, ang Commission on Appointments natin, they are composed of of course, they are composed of the President of the Senate as ex officio chairman, 12 senators and 12 members nga, 24 nga, 24. May 12 senators, may 12 members ka ng House of Representatives. Then, of course, ang election nito is in the basis of proportional representation of the political party. So, for example, yung majority mo is to 75-25. Dapat 75-25 din yung apportionment ni Commission on Appointments, di ba? You just check the cases of Coseteng, which discussed yung although yung Coseteng and yung si, I think the Gonzales, isang Gonzales case din yon. If you're going to note that, this was the time na medyo conflicted pa yung mga bagay-bagay. Tingnan nyo, hindi na siya nasundan kasi, well, I think clear naman yung ano, and of course, parang the last Congress in the past year, sobrang super majority minsan pag nagko-collision sila eh. So, usually one or two members lang usually opposition sa commission appointments. Usually they are majority based, di ba? But note na kailangan i-require yung proportional representation dun sa COA. Okay? Alright, then okay, so now let's discuss finally si impeachment. Okay? So impeachment. So what do we know about impeachment? So yung Congress na yung of course we have impeachable officers, di ba? So we have to cross-check it with our accountability on public officers, 'di ba? Nakalagay yan dun sa Article 11 natin, 'di ba? So, of course, Article 11 is your accountability of public officers. So we have an enumeration who are impeachable officers, okay? So, syempre, sino mga impeachable officers natin? Number 1, presidente at saka vice president, 'di ba? Number 2, mga Supreme Court justices, si CJ at saka si justices, ano yan, they are impeachable officers. Tapos, members ng constitutional commissions, impeachable din yan. Then, the ombudsman is also an impeachable officer. Kaya, di ba, naalala nyo si Mercedes Gutierrez, they tried to file impeachment cases, nag-resign na lang siya. Alam natin sa Supreme Court, na-impeach si Chief Justice Corona. President, na-impeach siyempre si ERAP, pero hindi natapos yung impeachment trial. Okay, doon tayo magsa-starting point. Kasi, note that, ito, may role ang Congress. Okay? You note the role of Congress. Okay? So, the House of Representatives is the one who would be initiating and finalizing the impeachment proceedings. So ang gagawin niya, may complainant yan, magbibigay ng reklamo sa Secretary General. Pag naibigay sa Secretary General, ibibigay nila sa Committee on Justice. Titingnan nila kung may substance and may form and substance ba yung reklamo. If they found that may form or substance, ibibigay na nila sa plenaryo yon. Now, pag nasa plenaryo yan, there is only a need of 1/3 vote of all members of Congress. Pag naabot mo yung 1/3 vote, okay, ng members of Congress, the president or that impeachable officer in particular is now considered as impeached. Okay, note nyo, pag bumoto yung 1/3 nyo at nag-declare na there is sufficiency in form and substance sa impeachment complaint that we are now drafting the articles of impeachment, kasi yun ang magiging role ng Congress, ng House of Representatives. They're going to draft and write the articles of impeachment. Pag nag-write sila ng articles of impeachment, technically, the president or the impeachable officer is already impeached. Okay? So, pag tinanong kayo, pag kailan impeach ang president, it is upon the passage or the approval of the articles of impeachment. Now, syempre, ang gagawin ng Kongreso, i-forward na nila yung articles of impeachment sa Senado. The Senate will now conduct a Senate trial. So, magkakaroon ka na ngayon ng impeachment trial. So, 2 beses na nagkaroon ng impeachment trial, ng panahon ni ERAP at saka panahon ni Chief Justice Corona. So, after ng impeachment trial, magkakaroon na sila ng judgment. Okay? So, pag nagkaroon na ng judgment, yun, malalaman natin. Ngayon, of course, when we speak of judgment, kung ikaw yung respondent sa impeachment complaint, you just need more than 1/3 of the vote. Kasi for conviction to happen, kailangan bumoto sa iyo more than 2/3. Okay? So kailangan mo na, kung ikaw yung respondent, kailangan mo na kung mausap ng few people, 'di ba? Kahit paano to acquit you. Okay? But note, 'di ba, kay Chief Justice Corona lumagpas ng 2/3 'yon. So I think 20-3 yung botohan. So na-impeach. Na-remove siya from office. So it is through the impeachment trial that the impeachable officer is going to be removed from office. Okay? So, sa Congress, impeach siya. Sa Senado, i-remove siya. Okay? Alright. Now, Siyempre, ang main issue dito sa, so yun yung role ng Congress, okay, when it comes to impeachment, okay? Now, of course, the next question kasi dyan is, anong effect ng impeachment, okay? So, siyempre, effect ng impeachment is, well, he was removed from office, okay? But as to whether there would be benefits, di ba? Hindi kasama yon. That can be subject of a separate administrative case. Ganun din sa, kung example, may kailangan kaharapin na criminal case, that's subject to a separate criminal case. The purpose of your impeachment is just to remove that impeachable officer because of the certain grounds, which is, di ba, ano ba grounds sa impeachment for grounds for impeachment. So, you may be impeached, di ba, for 'di ba, for conviction of, so you may be removed from office on impeachment for or and conviction of culpable violation of the Constitution, treason, bribery, graft and corruption, other high crimes, or betrayal of public trust. Okay? So, yun yung mga grounds mo for impeachment against impeachable officers. Now, syempre before we kind of wrap this, syempre insofar as impeachment is concerned, syempre ang kailangan natin i-discuss syempre is of course Francisco versus House of Representatives. This was asked in the bar, si Francisco versus House of Representatives. So ano ang ruling ng sa Francisco? You cannot file two impeachment cases within the same year kasi may 1-year bar yan even in your constitution. So, naka-state dyan yung 1-year bar. Okay, so sabi nga sa Section 3, Paragraph 5, no impeachment proceeding shall be initiated against the same official for more than once within a period of 1 year. Sa Francisco, direct naman siya kasi na-dismiss yung unang impeachment complaint. A month later, nag-file ulit sila na second. So, well, applying verba legis, di ba? And all of those statutory constitutional construction techniques, di ba? Clear naman na hindi within 1 year yung nangyaring pagpa-file ng impeachment against kay Chief Justice Davide. That is why the second impeachment complaint is declared as illegal, di ba? Unconstitutional siya, okay? Then we have si Gutierrez versus House of Representatives / Committee on Justice, okay? So, anong nangyari kay Gutierrez naman? Remember, si Merceditas Gutierrez, medyo pinailan si Ombudsman ng an attempt to file an impeachment against the Ombudsman. So, di ba, nangyari, nag-file ng impeachment complaint before the SONA. So, before the session started, may nag-file 4 days before ng impeachment complaint. Tapos, siyempre, usually naman pag may nagpa-file, may sumusunod na nagpa-file. So after nag-open yung Congress ng 4th week of July, may nag-file ulit. Siyempre, at that time, hindi pa nag-meet yung Committee on Justice. Kasi usually, August naman nagko-convene yung mga yan. Kasi, siyempre, budget call and of course, yun yung talagang start ng legislative work around August na eh. So nung August, so in between the time na may nag-file 4 days before the opening of Congress, may nag-file na iba din. So, ang ginawa ng Committee on Justice, kinonsolidate nila lahat yung kaso. So, dilump nila sa isang kaso. So, well, syempre, question ni Ombudsman Gutierrez yung act ng Congress. Bakit mo nilump in lahat yan? Diba? Bakit mo nilump in yung lahat ng cases? Sabi ng Supreme Court, allowed yun. I mean, the Congress has the discretion to do that. Besides, nakalagay naman doon commencement di ba? Na session. Siyempre, hindi mo naman nagko-commence yung session kasi, di ba, pinareceive. Kasi sinasabi ng Supreme Court, pinareceive mo lang naman sa Secretary General yan. Hindi pa naman ini-initiate yung act. Nag-concentrate sila doon sa discussion on the initiation of the impeachment. Hindi pa ini-initiate yung impeachment. Nagkaroon ng initiation nung nagkaroon na ng meeting ang komite. Di ba? So, at the time, naka-suspended an evasion lahat ng kahit magdagdag ka pa ng kaso, hindi pwede nang i-call ni Congress ng committee yan to hear everything. So, lahat niya nakalamp na. Okay? So, that's allowed. Actually, because of that, nag-resign si Ombudsman. Biglaan Yeah, alam ko nag-resign siya after losing eh. So yun. So yun yung impeachment. Then of course, yung relation ng impeachment with respect to co-warranto. Okay? So it's because of Republic versus Sereno that, well, apparently impeachable officers nowadays can also be removed by co-warranto. So lumalabas meron ng other option. If you cannot remove an impeachable officer through impeachment, you can remove it. You can possibly remove someone through co-warranto. It happened in Republic versus Sereno, 'di ba? So, 'di ba, sinusubukan nila impeach siya, no? Tapos bigla nagfile ng co-warranto si Solgen. So, makat sa Supreme Court, well, sabi ng Supreme Court in a very contentious, hindi mo siya contentious in a vote, pero syempre it was a little bit scrutinized. And of course, we have to consider the dissents of Justice Carpio and Justice Leonen, okay, in the case. Diba? Doon sa kaso ni Republic versus Sereno, well, they justified the removal because co-warranto may be implemented against even an impeachable officer as long as there are the grounds and you comply with the requisites. Okay? Of course, in my book, if you read my book, I have some comments on that. Kasi, well, maybe because the Supreme Court is maybe, well, quote unquote, well, they find if you're going to read that if you're going to look back at what happened during those Sereno years, the Supreme Court is not really in good terms with Sereno. So of course the decision was basically based on, of course, she's really not fit to be Chief Justice because she failed to comply with his qualifications and submission, and particularly also the submission of her SALN. Okay, but nonetheless, there are matters there which I think the Supreme Court needs to clarify because there are several statements there which are obiter because remember in when we speak of co-warranto, we can speak of co-warranty under Rule 66 of your Rules of Court. The Sereno case did not qualify whether or not it also applies to election co-warranto because that's also co-warranto. It appears that they kind of mix the discussion there. Eh. So I think that's just my comment on that. Okay. Then then of course you have to consider, it depends on, of course there is already a clarification in the recent case. I'm not so recent, it's 3 years ago, yung case ni Cristina Corona kasi 'di ba eventually Chief Justice Corona died. Okay, then when he died, of course the wife is claiming the pension. Okay, so the Supreme Court justified, of course they justified they justified the prayer for the grant of pension because of course insofar as impeachment is concerned, impeachment is a political process of removing someone from office, in contrast with other modes of removal from office through similar means, like for example filing an administrative case. In this case they determined that Chief Justice Corona was not removed from office because of, he did something administratively egregious. As a matter of fact, the Supreme Court kind of said that, well, the motivation on impeachment is more political in character. Then they reiterated the Republic versus Sereno ruling. Okay, that there is a distinction between co-warranto and impeachment. Okay, so just cover all of those matters. Okay, so that is it. So this concludes the discussion on the powers of Congress, of course, with a bit of an interplay with executive prerogatives. Okay, but of course this is all more or less all of the powers of your Congress. Okay.